everybody, and welcome to the APVA Discuss and Interview. Today, I am joined with Chulu, and we are going to be discussing strategies of building and engaging with your listeners. So, we all know it is pretty vital that when you have a podcast, you are creating this content for relevant audience or people that you wish to learn or understand whatever that you're sharing. So now, how do you find those people and how do you engage with those listeners? So I will introduce Chulu to you today so she can be able to answer all of these questions. Chulu Chansa is the founder of African Women, which is a safe space for women to have an open and vulnerable conversations. In addition, it is a resource for women pursuing self-love, health, and wealth. Chulu was born in Zambia, educated in 3 continents. She is fluent in diversity, equity, and inclusion, a business and creative mother, also a producer and a commander of words. She is also a transformational speaker who combines charm with the highest level of profession. She delivers thought-provoking talks with a touch of humor and an inclusive approach. So Chulu's superpower is creating a safe space for uncomfortable conversations among the diverse group of people. So yeah, Chulu, I would like you to just tell me about yourself, even though we've mentioned what we curated from you, but I would like to hear that from you.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for this invitation to talk about community and building your audience and engaging with them. So again, my name is Chulu. I'm the founder of Africana Woman, and it is a very beautiful community of women, both on the continent and in the diaspora. And we exist to help women to embody self-love, health, and wealth. On a personal note, I am somebody who loves to read. I love to be creative and work with my hands. And I also like to have a picnic on Sunday with my son.
Nice. That sounds like fun. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to head into the questions immediately. What motivated you to start your podcast? And what are your goals for audience growth?
So I think when it comes to why I started the podcast, I think it's 3 reasons. The first one is because African women are underrepresented all over in the media, in our history books. That's the worst one. You know, when we look back at our history books, you think of when you were in high school and you're learning about history, how many African women can you identify that you learned about? Very, very few. But that doesn't mean that African women haven't been doing anything over these, thousands of millennia. As I know, an African woman, we are go-getters. We are always on the move. We're always doing something, right? And bringing communities together. So I decided to bring the Africana Woman podcast into fruition because I really wanted to capture African women's stories. I think there's a quote which a lot of people like, and I'm just going to rephrase it, which says that, history is told from the perspective of who is writing it, right? So if we don't take up the pens ourselves or tell those stories ourselves, then we will continue to be forgotten in history. So that's one of the reasons why I started the podcast. I think the second reason is also for it to be, I think, for the people that are telling their stories, they're telling it, sometimes they're telling it for the first time, and I think it's very cathartic, and sometimes it just helps to be able to say your story out loud, right? So it's also a bit healing for them as well. And I think for the listener, it is something that allows them to see that they're not alone. Because I think a lot of times we go through things, and because people don't talk about them, they are taboo topics, or, it's just those topics which are spoken about in hush-hush tones. We tend to think, oh, I'm the only one that's experiencing this, but that's not the truth. So to hear your story, a similar story on the podcast, and then say, oh, wow, this is how they got out of it, or something can be done, I think it gives hope, and it also allows people to know that they're not alone.
And
So yeah, in terms of, you said in terms of my growth strategy, was that your
yes,
second
which is
question?
actually the next. Yeah, second question is actually, can you share a successful strategy or a tactic that you've used to engage with your listeners?
So I think one of the most successful strategies is to house the listeners, I'll say, in a certain space, right? So that we're able to communicate directly. When you're talking on the podcast, you're having an interview, maybe you're just two of you in that space. It's a very small space, and then you put it out, people listen to it, but then you're not sure who's listening to it. They're like, okay. But what I decided to do was to be very deliberate to bring people into one space and have engaging conversations in that space, right? So I used WhatsApp. Why WhatsApp? Because Africans love WhatsApp. That's what they know. And, you go and use the tools that people know instead of trying to force them into something else that you think might be easier. But I think WhatsApp is something that everyone is very comfortable with. They know how to use. So we have a WhatsApp group, and in there, I post, new episodes. If I'm having a bit of a break between releasing episodes, then I'll just do throwbacks. So just to keep it relevant, I'll say, hey, this week, listen to this one. This week, listen to this one. And then we can have conversations about what was discussed in that particular episode. So I think that has really helped to have an engaging community. And I also get to hear back from them to say, what do they want to hear about? What type of guests would they like? What did they really resonate with? And then I'm able to plan better for my next seasons.
Okay, that is awesome. And then what are challenges that you faced in growing your podcast audience, and how did you overcome them?
So I think one of the major challenges is, okay, ideally, being named Africana woman, then our target audience is an African person, right? However, on traditional podcast apps, it's very hard to be able to find and sort through what are the African podcasts. They're going to promote the biggest podcasts that they have, which are usually from the bigger markets, being in the United States or in Europe. So it's very hard for us to be discovered. And we really have to depend on word of mouth. We have to depend on guerrilla tactics, making sure that, you're trying to be very visible on social media. You're trying to be visible with different partnerships and working with different people so that you can get your name out. So I think one of the things that I really, really love is a space like this with APVA, which really just brings the African podcasters front and center, and you're able to say, wow, we have so many amazing African podcasts. Let me go listen to this and this. AfriPod, it's so easy to go through and, sort through. So I love that those types of spaces are coming up, podcast sessions, magazine, where it's just speaking about African podcasts specifically. So the more that we can have these spaces that really help people to discover African podcasts, I think it really has helped in out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And then the next question is, how do you currently measure the success of your audience growth efforts? And what metrics do you actually focus on?
Mm. Um, what, so I think for me, the I don't necessarily look at traditional metrics because I think a lot of the work that I do specifically is about planting seeds in people's hearts. So when we talk about a specific topic, people have to go and sit with it. I particularly enjoy um, when I get feedback about how a podcast episode helped somebody in their life in a practical way, and not necessarily focusing on downloads or looking at different statistics per se. I do believe for me, I think that it's easier for me to measure my growth from how quickly our community is growing. That's the community where that is housed in our WhatsApp group. So it started off very small, but now it's growing quite exponentially. So that also helps me to gauge how well we're doing, who we're reaching out to. And again, word of mouth is so powerful, right? So people are bringing in their friends, they're inviting them, and so that helps me to visually see where we are and who is actually listening to us, who is attracted to us, the type of person, and I can see sort of our target market in real life and have that direct contact with them.
Oh, right, great. So now moving on to the final question, which is, have you found any particular collaborations or partnerships to be successful in growing your podcast audience? So you did
Mm.
mention WhatsApp, right? Which is something that you've organically started, but have you ever had any other particular collaborations
Mhm.
that can
Yeah.
assist in the growth of your podcast?
Yes, I do believe that when podcasters come together to help each other, to promote each other, I think that also really helps. When I was starting podcasting, one thing that I said was that I do not want to do podcasting alone, right? So I did a bit of research. I found some podcasts that are quite similar to the type of podcast that I have, and I just reached out to them and I said, hey, can we like have a conversation? So we had an initial conversation, and then after that, we created a community. And I think so that one is called African Female Podcasters. So it's not around my particular podcast, but it's with fellow female podcasters. But what I really love about that is that, these are women in different markets and they're all over the world. And when they see opportunities, they're able to share them. When they are, we've been on each other's podcasts. So then we're tapping into each other's audiences. We have done panel conversations together. There's a lot of things that we've done together that I really think has helped to promote us as a group. And, even when, somebody will ask, oh, I'm looking for this type of podcast. They'll be like, oh yeah, I've got somebody in my community. And then they'll put your name forward. So I really think that when you're in a community, there's so many benefits instead of trying to do it alone and, just it'll get tiring. But I feel like when you have a community, you're able to at least share your experiences. And even on those low moments, you can tell them, hey guys, it's not great right now. And they're able to help you out where they can. So yeah, I think that's been one of my success stories.
Awesome. This is all excellent, Chulu. Thank you so much for sharing. And I trust that the audience that is listening right now, they will gain a deeper understanding of the strategies and the techniques that you've shared. And they will also realize the importance of building a community, because you can never do it alone. You always need somebody to help you, or somebody you can ask questions, or somebody that has done it before. They will be able to assist. And lastly, hoping that they will gain a clear vision, or sort of like a roadmap towards achieving their podcasting goals to building a bigger audience. Do you have any last words that you'd like to share?
Well, I think, you should always be very intentional and actually be genuinely interested in the people that you want to engage. I think that's where the success comes in, when you have genuine, authentic interest in your community, in what they are doing, and having conversations with them. When you are on your podcast, always have a call out, call to action, right? So if you want them to engage with you, don't just don't just do your normal podcast, but then let them know, hey, you can engage with me on social media, you can engage with me by email, or there's a form you can fill out. Have a call to action so that they know how they can contact you and how they can have those conversations with you. And I think especially when you're starting out, look out for the people who are reaching out to you directly, because those will become your ambassadors, right? Because when you start, you're like, I don't know who's going to listen, right? You're hoping, like, I don't know, your mother or somebody's going to listen. But but when somebody's like, oh my gosh, I listened to your podcast, it was great, then make sure you go back to them and say, hey, there's a new podcast out, there's a new episode out, and try and keep them engaged, because then they will become your ambassadors, and then it spreads like fire. So be very intentional about the decisions you're making, and again, find a community. And for me, I always say this: if you don't see something, you can always make it, right? And that's what I did when I started. I said, I don't want to do this alone. So then I was very intentional, and I found people that I could start a community with. And right now, there's even a bigger community, which is the Zambian Podcasters Hub, which started, a few years after. So be intentional. That's what I can say.
Thank you so much for sharing. To everybody that's listening, I hope you've been taking notes, because Chulu has shared so much information, which is very, very useful. So we are going to wrap up this interview with just thanking you so much for coming through and giving us your time to share all your wise words. And if you can just tell us where people can find you, if they have any more questions, or if they want to just know more information on how you are running your podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So Africana Woman is on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Africana Woman. Surprise, surprise. And then you can also come to our website, again, www.africanawoman.com. If you jump in our DMs, we will respond to you within 24 hours. So you are more than welcome to reach out. Love to get to know you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time, and cheers.